Państwu. Good morning or good afternoon. Proszę Państwa, witam wszystkich w Artv Chicago studio live. Chciałbym przedstawić moją asystentkę, absolwentkę Uniwersytetu Warszawskiego Wydziału Dziennikarstwa, Iwona Marinucci.
Dzień dobry.
I chciałbym, żebyśmy przedstawili naszych gości. Ja w takim razie poproszę Iwonko Ciebie, żebyś przedstawiła gości dzisiaj w studiu i na Hangout.
Dziękuję. Our guests in our studio today are Mr. Andrzej Przybyło and Ms. Danette O'Donovan-Matthias. Mr. Przybyło is a candidate for mayor in Niles, and Ms. Danette is a candidate for a trustee. On Google Hangout we have Mr. Bogdan Puksta, who is Executive Director of the Polish American Chamber of Commerce. Welcome, Mr. Puksta.
Hello.
And in today's program, we'll be talking about Poles who are running for different offices in Illinois, and especially we'll be talking about the upcoming election in Niles that will be on April 9th.
Yes.
So, Mr. Przybyło, can you tell us a little bit about your background and about your connection to the Polish American community?
Sure. Well, I was born and raised in Chicago. My father was born and raised in Chicago, but my grandparents, all four grandparents, came from Poland when they were children, probably around 1911, I believe. So the fact that I'm second, or some would say third generation, is rather unimportant to the fact that I went to school at St. Helens. Up until 5th grade, they taught Polish. Unfortunately, I didn't learn it very well. And my father was always very strong. He always had something going on with the Polish community. Near the end, he was the president of the Polish Welfare Association, which is now the Polish American Association. And then when he thought he did enough or he couldn't do it any longer, he asked, and the board of directors agreed that I would be the president of the Polish Welfare Association. And the thing I would say about it, the thing that it stays with me and sticks in my mind is it was that year that where martial law was declared in Poland. And a lot of Poles who were not in Poland but may have been in Europe somewhere, or were lucky enough to get out, because a lot of them knew martial law was coming, or they were able to cross the border. They were being brought into America, and in some cases, Chicago, and we were with Immigration and Naturalization Service, Polish Welfare Association was the welcoming agency. And I remember going to O'Hare with Al Majewski, who's left us. He was the president of the Polish National Alliance. Helen Szymanowicz, which was the vice president. I was with Father Pajak, who was my vice president at Polish Welfare. And we waited at the gate. This was when you could actually go to the gate. Mm-hmm. We waited at the gate, and the doors swung open, and I think at that time there were 18 Poles who were escaping from Poland. And of course we had all arranged where they were going to stay and get them acclimated and visit the offices and made sure that they were registered properly and able to work and survive in America if they wanted to. That's an account of my Polishness. I never deny it. My name is as Polish as can be.
Well, doesn't have a ski.
No, it doesn't have ski. But invariably, when someone looks at it, they say, "What is it?" Mm-hmm. And I say,
hard to pronounce.
Yes, I say it's Polish.
Yeah.
So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. And why did you decide to run for mayor's office?
Well, I saw the village going in a direction that I really didn't want it to go, and I thought that I could provide leadership, and I also thought that I knew enough about progressive government, government that's different, that relies upon people coming together and measuring successes that you set for yourself as goals or initiatives. And I also, as I was saying earlier, Niles runs on an 80% of its budget is sales tax. Because of all the shopping in Niles, we have to maintain that, keep it growing, and if there's a program like a 6B or something that the state is coming down with as a grant program, or the fact that we just hired a development officer for Niles, but we have to set agendas and goals for all these people and bringing new stores in, because with the sales tax then the property tax could be potentially lowered and still maintain services. So that's kind of it. Leadership, progressive government.
We have first question, but to Bogdan Puszta.
Okay.
Bogdan, pani Iwona, jak ocenia pan naszych kandydatów, którym trudno wygrać w wyborach, na przykład dr Foryś, Anna Góral czy Anna Klocek?
Oh, can I see it?
Should I be speaking English or Polish? Okay, well, the question, of course, relates what I think of candidates of Polish origin who are running for various offices, and there are some examples that are mentioned as Ms. Anna Góral or or rather Dr. Foryś, or in that matter, maybe even Andrzej Przybyło. I think it's wonderful that that they're trying. I think in some of the examples mentioned, so far they have not succeeded, and maybe that's a matter of not enough experience. Maybe it's a matter of trying to get to know the voters a bit better, and maybe it's a matter of time when more of them will be winning the races at various levels. I hope in the case of Andrzej Przybyło, I shouldn't say I hope, I'm sure that in the case of Andrzej Przybyło, there's not much more time needed for education and experience. I have known Andrew for quite a few years now, and having paid attention to the Polish community as a not so much as an island within a country, but more as part of the mainstream of America, part of the heart of America here, especially in Chicago. I think Andrzej Przybyło is a very, very strong candidate. I really have a very hard time thinking of anyone stronger right now. So I think that in some cases, it may take time. In this particular case, it's probably a matter of what, weeks? When is the election?
April 9th.
April 9th. So a matter of weeks when one more candidate of Polish origin. I think in this particular case, in the case of Andrzej Przybyło, that experience of dealing with politicians, maybe not so much up front, but in the background, has been quite beneficial for Andrew. I also think his experience of watching politics, participating in it as much as possible, not as an elected official perhaps, but also his experience as somebody who dealt with organizational life in the community, such as Polish Welfare Association, now Polish American Association, and most importantly for me, as somebody who is a member of a business association in the area, I like the fact that he has so much business experience as someone who we all identify with the biggest independent structure of its kind, if I remember right, in Illinois, the White Eagle. I think that will be very helpful, and so this combination makes him a prime candidate, somebody who is ready. In some other cases, when it comes to candidates of Polish origin, for example, Polish ancestry, Some definitely have already been winning, but others probably need to learn more.
Thank you very much for your answer. We have another question from one of our internet users. What can you do for the Polish American community in Niles after you win the election?
Well, in general, what I could do for them is to make sure that their children, as they're growing up, know that a political life of service is available to them. I think the first responsibility is to be a role model, and that's what I plan on doing, is being a good role model. I also plan on, like I said, reinvigorating our Sister Cities program with Lima Nova. I would really like to have children use this kind of technology as a format for the old pen pal. I mean, years ago when I was growing up, one of our things that we did in school was we had to develop a pen pal, but it was writing and sending letters to someone. It was a teaching tool, and I think that we could do that with our children vis-a-vis Lima Nova. We could take our library and change it. I hope maybe you're on the library board.
Yeah.
So maybe make it a true library and cultural center, whereby the different ethnic groups, but especially Poland. I mean, I think you told me that Niles is 23%.
23% of the Niles population has Polish roots.
Okay, so I think we can, build that culture of Polish Americanism there in the library. I know that at Village Hall we have at the front desk a Polish-speaking person, so that's not a problem. I think that maybe what we could do also is on our website we could have it primarily, it would come up in English, but if you wanted to, you can click on the Polish translation, as you could do probably maybe with German and the other languages. One of the other ethnic backgrounds that are coming up is Koreans, Korean Americans. So what else could I do? I think that about sums it up.
Yep, okay.
Andrew, I was wondering if there's a if the role of the mayor is the executive branch of
Yes.
government, right? How do you evaluate the legislative branch? Is it okay as it is now, or are the legislators named trustees?
Yes,
or
this is,
how's
yeah,
it
Bogdan, it's a
structured?
village form of government, so we have trustees. It's open districts as opposed to single-member districts like you would have as aldermen. A city has aldermen, and their area of representation is carved out. So that's the basic difference between what the state considers a city or a village. We, being a village, we have 6 trustees representing at large. And the current slate of trustees that we have now are not in agreement with things that I want to do or provide for the people of Niles. I consider myself extremely pro-business, and I don't see them as such. Most of them are retired teachers or lawyers. One has a business, but a business of not terribly longevity. It wasn't there long. So I need, as you asked the question, I need to elect the 3 of my candidates that I'm running with. With those 3, then I will have balance. Without that, I have gridlock. So that's not to say they couldn't or
So
wouldn't
the
take my
person
leadership
sitting next
on.
to you
They
is
could do
running
that,
for trustee, right?
but it would be much more sensible for the people of Niles to give me something to work with. And I know I could work with my slate. Thank you.
Mamy następne pytanie, tym razem again, to Bogdan. Bogdan, pani ma zapytanie, czy Polacy powinni kierować się pochodzeniem kandydata, czy preferencjami, demokraci czy republikanie?
I guess the question relates to whether voters, what should voters take into account more, the ethnic origin or national origin of a candidate, or other aspects. I think, frankly speaking, it's a balancing act, but certainly, as a community, we would like more candidates of Polish origin to run and win. But at the same time, we should not elect someone who is of Polish background who is going to do damage to the community and or to the economy or whatever, if we think so. So again, I think it's more important for the candidate to be the right one with regard to issues and the candidate's position on all kinds of things that affect our daily lives. If that candidate who is very good on issues happens to be of Polish origin, that's even better.
Thank you for your answer. And there will be a question for Ms. Patayas. What accomplishments in public or community service or your professional life would you like voters to know about?
Well, I was raised in Niles, attended St. John Brebeuf Parish. I have 2 children that were raised here, granddaughter. I went back to school because to me education is very important, and while I was raising my family and working full-time, I went back to college part-time and received my bachelor degree in business from DePaul University in 2006. I'm Niles Library Board trustee, and I think I've been on that board now for 2 years. I also have 30-year background in finance because I work for a major corporation. I think with sitting on the board at the library, I can bring what I know from there to the village board now.
Thank you. And Mr. Przybyło, what ideas do you have to improve the village in the areas of economic development and outreach to residents?
Well, the first thing that we have to do is create a performance management system, because we can say that we're going to do this as a goal, but unless you can measure it, then there's no point to it. And this I learned from President Preckwinkle in the county. She has a performance management system that I had to participate in, and as most of the rest of the county did, and the savings to the county taxpayer was $3.2 million last year. So, in order to make a benefit to the business community, I would first start by saying we need performance management to measure the Department of Community Development. With that, we just hired an economic advisor, development officer. He is in the process of marketing the village. In fact, there is downtown, I believe, first part of April, the International Association for Developers, Planners and Developers. So with that, he'll go and he'll see what's developing. He knows what vacancies we have, and I will work very strongly with him to promote and do what we can to get, for instance, 6B status, which is it's a state program, but it's more or less county because it has to be approved by the county board. And I will take those kind of programs and present them and make them work better. I also think that we could do a better job with a facade program, and you know, that's on a 50-50 cost. We only have $20,000 in this budget, so we give 20, you know, in small increments, and the business owner. But how much can you do with that kind of money? If you're going to rebuild your facade of your building to make it look beautiful and inviting. And I think the other thing that Bogdan hearkened to, I've been in politics and government a long time, and I know where the people are who control the money. And I know those people. And if I think that there's something available, I'm told it's available, and we qualify, it's not just about putting in an application. I'm going to be handing it in and calling my friends who are able to help me get those programs moving in Niles. So that's what it's all about.
Thank you. We know that the village of Niles is pretty divided right now between two townships, two high school districts, and multiple elementary school districts. What can be done to give Niles a sense of unity?
Well, unfortunately, there's nothing you can do about those divisions in school districts or park districts. For instance, I live in Niles, the village of Niles, but my park district is Park Ridge. Doesn't make any sense. The library has its borders that go outside the village of Niles. But there's not much you could do. But in terms of creating a sense of unity with the people in Niles, our slogan, if you will, is Niles Pride. And to do that, we want to bring back that old spirit of neighborhood. We do not have a downtown, that's clear. And so what we're going to do is go into and look at the neighborhoods, create identities. We haven't changed our street lights ever. And with energy efficiencies and things of that nature, maybe each neighborhood could have its own unique street light or unique street signage. And it could take on a whole character of its own. And then with that, Danette, you've indicated your willingness to go out there and start the block party programs during the summer and bring back the welcome wagon, which is a great thing, because when people move into Niles who are new, they are welcomed with a basket with gift certificates and information about the stores and services, those kind of things. Those are the things that we want to do to, you know, create a spirit in Niles Pride.
That's a great idea.
Thank you.
Mr. Bogdan, would you like to add anything?
Oh, it's a special day today. In some ways, of course, the holiday, but special also in the sense that this is the second time I'm participating in a conversation dealing with political situations. Just about half an hour ago, I came back from a meeting that was organized by several chambers from the northwest side of Chicago with state legislators. There were 2 senators, 2 state representatives, and it was a fascinating conversation to hear an update from them. My friend from the Greater Avondale Chamber of Commerce, Dan, just joined me, walked in. Dan, if you would like to participate in that meeting as well. And it's interesting how their update, the legislative update from Springfield, focused on pension reform, on gun controls, and on social issues. So those of us who were chamber representatives got kind of impatient, and we started to ask finally questions related to business and economic development, which are kind of on a back burner. So I was wondering, Andrew, as a candidate for mayor, do you think the social agenda is important for Niles as well, or is it going to be more economic development and other issues?
Bogdan, I think it's a part of both. I mean, you have to have the social issues. I mean, there's no question that gang activity and shootings are not necessarily a part of any particular suburb, but it is a pervasive social ill. So you have to deal with the social issues. You have to deal with the pension, but there's going to come a time when there will be monies flowing for redevelopment. I think you see that in the county right now. What they're doing is they created a land bank where deficient properties for but property tax reasons, or if it's a piece of property that can be had very inexpensively, then the county is grabbing it and bringing it to the Bureau of Economic Development and saying, okay, what can we do with it? How can we better use the property? And I wouldn't be adverse to looking at that. we have a piece of property. It's well over 6 acres, right near the railroad track on Lehigh. It's Granger. Granger is moving out, and there's going to be some redevelopment there, and Niles has to be a big part of it because we need to make sure that it fits and works together with the other parts of the business community. There's no question there's gridlock in Washington, Bogdan, and I think that's part of the problem because the country is not focused on redevelopment infrastructure. Our roads are falling apart, our bridges are falling apart. We need a new energy grid, and that can't be done by an electric company. It has to be done in a unified way with government, some government involvement. But there's so much to do, and I just don't like the gridlock. I want to set a goal and go after it, and I spoke too long. Sorry.
Thank you.
Welcome,
No, that's okay.
welcome Daniel Pogorzelski.
Yes, it's very, very nice to meet everyone. Thank you very much for the conversation. I can personally say from having listened to the conversation that I'm actually very thankful to be a part of it, and highlighting one of the things that Bogdan alluded to, as well as Mr. Przybyło. If there's anything that I think that really sets apart the Polish community is our drive for entrepreneurial activity. When you look down, as embodied by your families and many other Poles when you look at it. And so I personally am actually very buoyed by the fact that Mr. Przybyło is actually speaking very much, because I believe it's a priority, just like Bogdan
Well,
does.
and it's so good and so optimistic from a business development perspective that someone like Andrew is running for mayor of Niles.
Indeed.
It may be a village only, but a very important one. With as far as the Polish community is concerned, it's very close to the city of Chicago, so there's a lot of interaction there and between various localities. I was wondering why Limanowa is part of your sister cities program. Why not, for example, Świnoujście?
Well, good question. The reason being is that a group of Polish-American businessmen in Niles, they came and suggested Limanowa, and they let us know what Limanowa was like. The location was important. The fact that it was some tourism, some manufacturing, that it had a beautiful town square, and the most important thing, besides the businessmen suggesting it, was the fact that they wanted to be our sister city. So we set the invitation out. We went there to look, and they welcomed us and played host to our delegation. And then we brought them here, and they liked what they saw here. And sister cities is like a marriage. It's a courtship first, and then it should flower into something. Is that the answer for? Someone recommended it, and I have no regrets. Thank you.
Oh, yes, Limanowa is beautiful.
We have the next question. It's good to see you, Daniel, because the question is about young generation. Mr. Przybyło, what is your opinion about activity young Polish generation with compare previous old generation? And so for you, the question is too, Daniel. Okay.
Well, at the White Eagle, I think 2 or 3 nights a week, we have Polish dance groups and culture, and I see the young children learning how to dance and sing, and there's a great deal of Polish pride that goes on there, and the parents all are hanging out in the lobby, and the kids are in the different rooms with their teachers. So I think that's a great thing, and the Polish schools that are maintaining the language and teaching the language. So all that is fine. Did it go on before? Yes, it did. I think we can maybe do a better job of mentoring young people. Not that they necessarily need it, but there's a program, I think it's called something like shadowing. In other words, I, in my day, typical day, would have with me a high school student who had some interest either in food service or government, and he would go everywhere with me for the whole day, maybe the whole week. And that kind of mentoring is, I think, important because it gives the person a chance to see, not to just imagine what is involved in whatever. I mean, you could mentor a young person.
I should be mentored.
Okay, you're very young then. But the idea, maybe we all could be mentors to someone younger, and I think that's what you can basically do for Polish Americans who are young.
And
Yes.
Andrew, I know that some of the northern suburbs of Chicago are, well, kind of struggling with the fact that the population ages, and the average age in some of the suburbs are much higher than other other localities. Do you think the mix of young and more experienced people living in Niles is the right one, or would you like to bring in more young families there?
There's no question we have to bring in more young families, and we have to do it in a somewhat organized, and I don't want to use the word aggressive, but I think you understand. 6 years ago, the Cook County Housing Authority offered to do a study at no cost to the village. They would actually poll the people who were 65 and older and ask them simple questions, but directing to the fact, if you have the choice of living in Niles in a affordable setting, multifamily, that you wouldn't have to worry about a garden or things that you no longer need, and in a situation where if you fell down there would be help for the person, then if the study proved correctly, we've got some land that is very, very prime for development for that purpose. I'm talking about not necessarily assisted living, but senior housing. If you get the seniors to move to senior housing, which could be very nice, could be actually beautiful, then that turns over the home, the single-family home. With the single-family home, the children come. When you have the children, you have the schools. You have consumers, which helps the stores. So it's a whole microcosm of things that go around. But you're right, Bogdan. We have to take care of our seniors, make them always feel welcome in Niles, but the housing stock has to move. I mean, it just does. And it eventually will. But if we could help it in some way and have a win-win for everybody, so much the better.
Daniel, could you tell your opinion about Polish young professional?
And kind of segueing into the earlier question, we were talking about Polish community in terms of where young folks find themselves both in the professional community as well as the political sphere. I think that there's one difference. One thing that's plagued the Polish community for a long time was not building coalitions. We focused on inner solidarity when that can be successful to a point. And I think what's most important is for us to build coalitions with outside of our group. And if there's one thing that I've seen, whether it's the good work that Bogdan does, or many of our other sister delegate agencies that are in the city of Chicago and the suburbs, is that we're finally getting to see people building those coalitions. And I think that is one of the differences that I think holds out a lot of hope for positive development.
I suppose Daniel is suggesting that and hoping that Andrew, as candidate, is not only spending time with Polish community media outlets, but also visits with the Italians and other ethnic groups that are going to vote for him, right?
Absolutely right. We've selected a long list of German Americans and Korean Americans and Italian Americans. In fact, before I came here today, at 10 o'clock I was on K Radio, AM 1030, I believe, and there was an interview in Korean for Korean Americans. And so yes, Daniel, coalitions are where it's at. You got to make your connection within your own. You have to come from a position of strength. But once you have that strength, you partner then with, let's say it could be the Hispanic community, because together you're
Right.
you're a lot stronger than you may be individually.
And that I think is the key to more candidates of Polish ancestry, of Polish origin, winning elections, working in coalitions, working with other, stepping outside the Polish community and treating it as part of a greater community, not as an island.
Agreed.
Well said as always, Bogdan.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask, I know that the Niles New Party team petitioned Congress regarding the visa waiver program for Poland. Could you tell us what's the current status of this petition?
The petition was presented to Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky, and we did that well over a year ago. And I've been in contact with the Congresswoman, and she's working diligently with Congressman Quigley and Senator, not Durbin.
Durbin.
Help me someone. The senator who had the stroke.
Kirk or Durbin?
Mark Kirk, thank you. Working together with Mark Kirk to get that travesty away from America. I mean, the fact is that Polish nationals should be afforded the same respect that a German national does, or an Italian national. I mean, what is so different about Poland, especially when the U.S. government did the visa waiver for Lithuania and Estonia, and I think Hungary, if I'm not mistaken, on the south, and they don't do it for Poland. You got to ask yourself the question, why? Now, they're not obligated, our State Department, our national government are not obligated to give rights to nationals. But I have rights. I have rights. When my mother was sick and she wanted to see her cousin from Dębica, or Krzyszów rather, and she wanted to see her cousin, and her cousin was denied visitation rights to see my mother, who was very ill. Now, where were my mother's rights? Especially because there's no equality of the law. It's a principle in our Constitution that you have to treat people equally. And my mother is not being treated equally, or was not. And if you ask them the question, well, how did you come to the decision that this lady could not see Alice Przybyło, but somebody else could? That's called due process. And if they can't explain it, then how could they defend it? And so this whole thing is really wrong. I mean, Polish Americans should take to the streets. I mean, it's wrong.
But I'm not sure, Andrew. But I also think that that Polish Americans should take to the streets, not so much to tell the American government or U.S. Congress that the program is needed for Poland. They should take to the streets because it's needed for the U.S. Economy, to benefit citizens such as you and your family here who can't freely connect with their relatives whenever they'd like to in Poland. For us, as part of the U.S., it's needed more so than for Poland. Poles in Poland have other places to go and options, and if they really want to come here, they will certainly apply. But the biggest factor, I think, is that the U.S. government does not seem to realize how important it is for Americans and for the U.S. as opposed to
the concept I was thinking about, they couldn't put it, is equal protection under the law. And my mother did not have equal protection under the law. And you could say, well, there is no law that dictates visa waiver, but in essence, there is. And so, Bogdan, we agree. I'll meet you in the street.
Okay.
Any
Niles?
street you want, and we'll protest.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Przybyło, Ms. Matias, if you had only a few minutes to convince residents of Niles to vote for you, what would you tell them? Ms. Matias?
I guess what I'd have to say is, and going back to Andrew's earlier, we need to bring back Niles again. I mean, it's not the way it used to be when I was growing up. I was able to knock on any neighbor's door. I knew every neighbor by name, where it doesn't seem to be that way anymore. And I understand, yes, everybody's busy, everybody works. So, you know, once they get home, they just want to go home and, you know, relax after a hard day. But I just feel that Niles needs to be brought back, you know, to where it was. Friendly, the spirit, the pride, the summer activities, you know, where we're all together, you know, unity.
Thank you. And Mr. Przybyło?
I would say that our team represents honest, open government, and I believe we have the ability, leadership, to provide for progressive government. And I mean truly progressive government, a new committee structure in the council, teens working with seniors. The biggest complaint in the village of Niles that comes into the village hall is skunks and raccoons, mainly skunks. In fact, whenever I mention that, people clap because they want the animal control officer brought back because they're tired of it. And so those kinds of issues. And I also spoke to you earlier about keeping those stores thriving. We have business people on our slate that understand business, and we understand service. I mean, being in the restaurant business is about service. And so is George Albajanis in the restaurant business. So we understand service, progressive government, open government, accessibility. Those are the reasons why you want to vote for us.
Thank you.
And if I could mention,
Yes.
I would be delinquent if I didn't. We said we have Danette O'Donovan Matthias, but there's George Alpajanis and also John Jeckett. And I need all three of them to stand with me. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Puchta, Mr. Pogorzelski, would you like to add anything?
To add, you know, that if there are any citizens of Niles listening, come out on the 9th of April and vote. And today, hopefully, at least if I was a Niles citizen, I would feel very comfortable about a certain candidate. And I guess in addition to having good candidates, it's also important to have good turnouts, wouldn't you say?
I could not agree more, because what's important is that for people to really participate in our democracy and to place a voice. And I'll certainly agree with Bogdan, who, as always, says it quite well, that when it comes to speaking to the issues that I think that are important, not just for the Polish community, but for all of us as taxpayers, as people that are trying to grow out the pie, that what I heard today, I was very, very happy to hear that we have someone who's a candidate here at Niles.
Do we still have time to move to Niles?
So.
Well, thank you very much, our guests, for your participation in our discussion. Thank you, internet users, for watching us. We would like to wish all of you a very happy Easter and good luck in the upcoming election.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, gentlemen.
Yes. Happy Easter,
Same to
everyone.
you.
Wesołego Narodu.
Wesoły świąt.
Wesołych świąt.
Thank you.